What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another video, and today I just wanted to share with you how to write in the style of Yiruma. So in case you're unaware, Yiruma is a wonderful Korean pianist who had a big influence on me growing up. He was the composer for the tune River Flows in You, which is a very famous piece, and ever since I've been really listening to his albums, and it really touched a lot of my composing and improvising process. So if you watch any of my videos where I play and demo libraries on the piano, a lot of that is influenced by his music. And so his style basically features a lot of simple melodies that are really beautiful piano solo pieces with simple chord progressions and well-structured pieces, but with a really deep emotional quality as well. And so I wanted to share that with you here in today's video, share with you how you can evoke that sort of style. And to demonstrate that, I want to break down my piece Consolation for cello and piano. So the reason I'm using this piece is because that piece is directly influenced by one of Yiruma's pieces called I, like literally just the letter I, ... from his album First Love. And it's a really beautiful piece and was a direct inspiration for my piece Consolation. And so I'm going to break down the melodic structures, how I wrote the chord progressions, the structure of my piece, and how I thought about emotion throughout the entire thing, and to, basically create an enjoyable listening experience from start to finish. So I'll break that down for you in this video, and if you're interested at all in the sheet music afterwards, I'll share with you at the very end how you can grab that as well. But with that being said, let's jump into the video. Please enjoy my breakdown of Consolation. All right, welcome to this breakdown of Consolation. Really excited to walk through this with you. This is one of those pieces that I knew instantly I wanted to start off the recital with this, because immediately when the chorus hook came in, that for me sort of encapsulated the whole vibe I wanted for this recital. Something more relaxed and flowing and sort of nostalgic in a way. So I didn't really want to be overly flowery with any of the harmonic language or really do anything super out there. I wanted to keep it more reserved and have that sense of consolation and relaxation and forgiveness in there. So the way I kind of thought about this in terms of the Yiruma influence was I really wanted a simple, memorable melody. I wanted to make it diatonic, use chord progressions that were familiar to the listener, and then throw in the occasional color chord here and there, like a secondary dominant, or maybe use some modal mixture just to switch it up a tad. So what I'll do is I'll go through step by step. I'll go through one section at a time and kind of walk through the melody, the harmony, and the structure of the whole piece. And just so you know, I'll start with the structure right off the bat. This piece is laid out in a traditional pop song structure. So you can think of it as verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and then we have the second verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and then we have a bridge, and then we have a final chorus. That is the traditional pop song structure. The main difference here, though, is that I actually don't have a bridge. So right after the second chorus, I go immediately to the final chorus, and the final chorus has a modulation going up a semitone. So we change keys, the whole color changes, and you can feel that in the performance as well, hopefully. So just to kick things off, we're in the key of G major, very, very simple, and the first couple bars just kind of go back between the 1 chord and the 4 chord, right? Now notice the G on the bottom, that's sort of the pedal point. So that right there is lending that bass foundation while I change chords on top, so there's sort of a wave. It's kind of a back and forth feeling, but very diatonic, very smooth, very predictable sort of feeling. And that's the intro. Then when the melody comes in the cello, you kind of see there's sort of a natural arc in terms of the direction of the melody, right? It kind of starts in the middle, kind of goes down a bit, and then leaps up, so we get that bit of an emotional feel, and then it settles back down on this long note. And I'm also trying to use rhythmic variation throughout the melody just to give it some interest. So not all long notes, not all short notes, but sort of a mix of both. And this is the sort of melody that came to mind when I wanted that moving sort of feel to it. So it starts a bit more calmly, and then it ends off like that, right? So there's a bit of a push and a pull there. And the piano accompaniment is very, very simple in terms of the way I'm using the hands to accompany. They're basically just broken chords. I'm throwing in some like seconds in there as well of the chord, but just keeping the whole thing flowing and moving and really just highlighting the cello above. So in terms of the chords themselves, I'm going from the 1 chord, the G major chord, and then I'm going down to the 5 chord in first inversion. So we have the G stepping down to F sharp. So 1 to 5, and then that's the 6 chord down to the 4 chord up to the 5. So 6 chord down to the 4 chord up to the 5. basically all preparing for this dominant right there. Now this is a sus chord, right? It's a D sus4, so it's allowing that G to really want to go down to the F sharp before we resolve back up to the G major chord. But in this case, I didn't really want to do that. I just wanted to hold the G there and then lead us directly back into the G chord. So it feels a tad more ambiguous, like we're holding on to something, and then we get that resolution. So we're sort of playing around with expectations just a little bit. Then the second half of this theme, the verse here, the melody changes very slightly. So instead of going da 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 da, again, this time it goes da da da. So we're going a little bit higher. We're reaching that F sharp before we fall back down to the D, and the chords are basically the same. So 1 down to the 5 in first inversion, 6, 4, 5, and this time instead of the sus chord, we get a full-on dominant 7th chord. So that was the little change I wanted there. The first time I wanted a bit of suspense with the G, but then the second time around, I wanted to settle right on that third of the chord. And the third is usually the strongest note of a chord, so it really gives it that dominant or major sort of identity to it. Then the B section, here's where we have the pre-chorus. So the melody sort of speeds up a little bit because now instead of it being in 4-bar phrases, it's sort of like in a 2-bar phrase. So it goes like, that's the 2-bar phrase, and then, right, so those little mini phrases, da 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 da, that's sort of that little mini phrase there, sort of like a sequence. The second time a little bit lower than the first. And in terms of the chords, it's just going from the 4 chord to the 4 chord, the 5 chord, 5/7, but in third inversion. So we have the C on the bottom, again maintaining the bass from the bar before, and then we settle on the 3 chord to the 6, followed by 2, 5, 1. So basically going around the circle of fifths there. And then the second time, so starting at bar 29, the chords 4, again to 5 in third inversion, 5/7, and then 3, and then here we have an E7, which is basically the dominant 7 of the following A minor chord. So this is what we call a secondary dominance. We're bringing in a dominant 7th chord that introduces a note outside of the key of G major, and it adds that splash of color before it's resolved to its temporary tonic, or in this case, the 2 chord. Now in this case, I'm using the 2/7 chord, so 2 minor 7, and that has a bit of a relaxed sort of feel to it. Used quite often in jazz music. 7s are used all over the place. And then we hold the sus4 for a second before we land on the dominant 7 straight up there, as you can see right here. And then we have the chorus that follows after that. So the pre-chorus starts on the 4 chord compared to the verse, which actually starts on the 1 chord. And that was very intentional. I wanted the pre-chorus to feel very different compared to the verse, because I wanted a distinct section difference. I wanted it to feel different, right? And then, yes, the melody here at the very end of the pre-chorus and the cello, it is really rising up to that high G, which is the sus note, the sus4, before resolving to the third of the chord. So, and then it resolves. So that's a big tension, like holding lots of tension, and then we get that release with this melody that follows. And then we get the rest of the chorus there. But this is the melody that popped up in my head first for this piece, and then I built the rest of the piece around it, basically. But as soon as this melody came to mind, I knew right away that I wanted this to sort of be the opener for the recital, and I knew for me it was going to be one of my favorite pieces after coming up with this hook. And this, in a way, kind of goes against a lot of what I teach, actually. I usually say not to write a melody with all the same note values because it can be a little bit boring. Usually I would expect to have a bit more variety in the rhythm, like maybe some half notes or whole notes, maybe some dotted notes as well, like in the verse, for example. But in this case, this was the exact melody that came to mind, and I knew I didn't want to change it. Da, 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 right? So it feels very steady and very flowing, and I kind of count on the cellist to really push the music forward, to have that feeling of momentum and then pull back at the end of the phrase. Or else, if it's played robotically, it does sound pretty boring, right? So the second, or the response, the second 4 bars, 41 to 44, it's pretty much the exact same thing. And the harmony is basically where we change it up a little bit. So the chords, by the way, are 1, 2, 3 to 4 to 5, very standard. And then same thing, 1, 3, 4, 5. And then here at the very end, we do a diminished 7th. So D sharp diminished 7 going up to the E minor chord in the following bar. And so I could have just gone from the 5, 7 straight to the 6 chord, but it wouldn't have had that little moment of dissonance, that touch of chromaticism. So here we get that diminished sound, very pining, very sad, and then that release comes through in the 6 chord. And of course, the 6 chord has a similar function to the 3 chord and the 1 chord, being sort of a tonic function. So it feels sort of steady. And like when we land on the 6 chord, it gives us a bit of release, which is nice. And then here, harmonically, I'm just kind of stepping down. So E minor, that's the 6th chord. And then we have this E flat in the bass. And the chord overall is an A minor 7 flat 5, or A half diminished 7. But I'm putting the E flat on the bottom, so it's in second inversion. And then I really love the half diminished 7 sound, by the way, the minor 7 flat 5. It's so ambiguous. It's more open than the regular diminished 7. So I really enjoyed using this chord here, because it's just a bit different, right? And then we get the 1 chord in second inversion over the D, and then we get that same A minor 7 flat 5, but this time in first inversion. So you could also treat it as a C minor 6. So you could say it's like a minor 4, if you will. But with that A in there, right, that could turn it into an A minor 7 flat 5. So that's the idea there. And then the last 2 bars, right, that's just a 1-6-4 to 5-7 to the 1 to finish. And the melody basically follows that very cleanly. So yeah, the second verse, pre-chorus and chorus do the exact same thing. But like I mentioned, there is no bridge here. So at the end of the second chorus, what we do is have an instant modulation. So I kind of say, let me find it here. Yeah, the second time, by the way, in the pre-chorus, we kind of go even higher. So instead of going, sorry, we go. Right, so it goes even higher. It hits that high B and resolves to the A instead of hitting the high G and then going down to the F sharp. So it's a third higher, which has even more emotional impact, I think. Hence the reason I did it there. And then it goes back up to the chorus, which is right here, section C, and that goes all the way to the end of this line right here on page 5. Then I wrote to coda, so then we have this 2-bar instrumental. Then we modulate to the key of A flat major, which is up a semitone, but we're going from 1 sharp to 4 flats, which is a big color change. You definitely feel it, and it doesn't feel super out of place because the bass is only stepping up 1 semitone, right? Everything is just moving up a semitone, but the whole color changes completely because we're going from all white notes except the F sharp to basically 4 black notes, right? Four flats there, and it's all centered around that A flat. So same chorus melody, same chord progression, but just in the key of A flat. And then at the very end, I wanted to bring the energy back down to like a 2 out of 10, so very low energy, because I wanted it to be consistent as the very beginning. So I kind of like writing pieces where I have one energy at the beginning, it explores, it does something different in the middle, and then at the very end, it pulls it back and brings it back to that initial energy. And so that's kind of what I did here, and just sort of an extended cadence at the very end. 1 to 4, back to 1, and then here, the second last bar, you see that F flat right there, that is the minor 4 sound before resolving back to the 1 chord to finish. Okay? And that's it. That is pretty much how I constructed this piece. So again, it's in song form. I used a very simple melody, simple melodic structure, and I used quite a few steps, like going from one note to another, just stepwise motion. But if I wanted that big leap of emotion, that big stretch, then I will go with that, because that, like going from, let's say, a super low note to a super high note, the cellist has to really reach for that note, or vice versa. You're going from really high note to a really low note. It requires a little bit more extra effort, and as a listener, we can kind of hear that. So we sort of treat that as a more emotional moment or having a bit more passion. And I think if you can get a melody that does that sparingly, like you don't want to overdo it, then you can be in a really good place. So that one example of that would be right here in the second verse, and then I go up the octave, right? So going from this G to this high G above middle C, that is an octave jump, and it feels more expressive because we're really having that high leap. So that's what I wanted for the melody, mainly stepwise motion, but then having that occasional leap to really introduce more emotion. And Yiruma does that really well as well. Like he's a master of crafting beautiful melodies that are simple but effective, and he has accompaniment that is relatively diatonic, so that means belonging to the key, and he will throw in the occasional color chord. Maybe that is a minor 4 or a flat 6 or a flat 7, or just a modal mixture, using modal mixture, stuff like that, just to add a bit more interest to the chord progression, so it doesn't stay stagnant and diatonic the whole time. And then and one more thing I really like about his pieces is that they're all self-contained. So most of his music, I think, are between like 2-3 minutes, maybe even 4 minutes sometimes, but it's not like a 20-minute opus or extended piece where you almost lose interest because there's so much going on, or the composer is forced to try to expand the piece into something longer than it has to be. I picked up a lot of inspiration from his writing style and his improvisation style. So simple melodies, simple chord progressions, but done in a way with good voice leading, allowing the bass to be very smooth, either ascending or descending, and then having the occasional leaps in the melody for extra passion. And it really just can come together in a really nice way. So I really appreciate you watching this. Thank you so very much. And we can move on to the next piece, which is the oboe piece, Child's Play. All right, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions about anything in the music, please feel free to let me know down below. And as I promised, if you want to purchase the sheet music, if you want to try it out for yourself on the piano, or if you're a cello player, you want to try playing this, I've linked it down below in the description box. And of course, if you want to check out my full composing process, then I'd love to share with you my free composing workshop down below, also called the Complete Composer's Framework. So it's a free on-demand workshop that goes through my entire composing process, like from the initial idea all the way to the polished final master, and I'll share with you step by step how I actually think about creating music from start to finish. So if that interests you, it's all down below in the description. Thank you again very much for watching, and I'll catch you in another video very, very soon. Take care.